Minister of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, Professor Frimpong-Boateng, has named some top government officials he claims were engaged in illegal mining activity widely referred to as Galamsey in this country. Now, in a 36-page report addressed to the President, the Chief of Staff and the Ghana Police Service, Professor Frimpong-Boateng named some individuals he claims frustrated his effort and the committee he chaired from addressing the canker of illegal mining. He also revealed that all ministers on the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining abandoned the committee's work except ministers for sanitation, local government and rural development. Now, the document, which also catalogs several instances of impunity by state officials, party activists, amongst others, cited the military for providing security to illegal miners in some parts of the country. Now, let me just put it on record that even though Professor Frimpong-Boateng has actually confirmed the details of this report, because we reached out to him, we are not going to make pronouncements suggesting that the persons named in this report are actually guilty of what they are being accused of, alleged to have done, because we understand investigations are ongoing and as have been instructed by the President. We also have details of that said directed by the President for the various security agencies to investigate this particular issue. But guess what? The details of this report are damning and has been described as a bombshell by many people. My colleague Dennis Wedam has been looking through the 36-page report which we have intercepted here at 3FM, and Dennis joins me in studio. Dennis, what more do we know in this report?
Well, like you rightly put it, this document is a subject of investigation as we know now. And it's a report that has been submitted to the presidency to look into some instances of violation to mining in the country. So this is actually a report from the now defunct Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining.
Right.
This was a program that was put together by the government to streamline the mining processes, especially small-scale mining in the country. At a point, there were concerns that the program was not achieving its intended purpose, so there needed to be some sort of a report on how it could be taken forward. So this report was put together by Professor Frimpong-Boateng.
Right.
Now, just to get you in, the introduction of the report, towards the far end of the report, there's something striking here that we need to pay attention to.
Great stuff.
So he writes that it is extremely important to note that the IMCIM, that's the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, activities centered on small scale and artisanal gold mining. This was tasked to, this task was performed to near perfection. At the time of the inauguration of the committee, the problem of mining in the forest and its attendant destruction of forest, cocoa farms, water bodies, farmlands, as well as harassment of villagers and bordering communities by armed mining guards, including soldiers, were not on the radar screen. As will be mentioned later in the write-up, the major challenges that we had in the community occurred in 2018.
In 2018.
Mind you, this committee was inaugurated in 2017.
Right.
And they started encountering challenges in 2018.
So just a year after the inauguration.
Yes.
It was 2017 that the President indicated he's putting his presidency on the line.
Exactly so. And that they encountered these challenges because when the Forestry Commission and the Ministry of Lands itself decided to give out almost all the forest reserves in this country for mining activities. This was reported to Cabinet on its meeting on the 28th of February 2019. And then despite that fact, the Cabinet directed the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources to suspend the issuance of the new license and permit by the Forest Commission, and also to suspend licenses already issued for operations in 47 forest reserves. Essentially, this report is saying that the major challenge was the fact that almost all the forest reserves in the country were given out for mining activities.
47 forest reserves.
Now, it goes on to list the issues one after the other, what he describes as the challenges that were encountered. And the first one which comes to mind, or which is listed as number one, is the fact that most of the members of the committee abandoned the committee. And the reason is that, so he said, apart from the Minister for Sanitation, Local Government and Rural Development, all the other members abandoned the committee. To make matters worse, the chairman himself, that's Prof himself, was personally attacked, vilified and framed for things he had not done, such assault came from many people, including some of the ministers who effectively left the committee.
So which assault is he talking about?
So later in the report, you'd find an instance where he mentions the name of the now Minister for Information, who according to him had gathered some journalists, both from NDC and MPP affiliated media houses, to frame him to be a man that was to put him in a bad light. He essentially says that it was after that meeting that it came out in the public that he they had confiscated some excavators.
That's
and
right.
that those excavators were missing.
Right.
He thinks that particular meeting was just a way of getting at him for the work that he was doing.
So you mean he says Kojo Oponkroma is alleged to have, according to this report,
that's one of the things that he said.
NPP and NDC affiliated journalists
at a hotel somewhere in Dodowa.
At a hotel in Dodowa.
And that meeting, according to him, or according to the report, was to set a certain agenda that will put him in a bad light for the work that he was doing in this particular space. He also goes on to mention the next challenge has been that mining in forest reserves, like he has already indicated. But when you look at the challenge in here, which he explains elaborately, he says that the decision was taken in 2018 by the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and its agencies to grant concessions in virtually all reserves to mining companies, and that did a lot of harm. That this was contrary to a directive from the president that all mining activities in forest reserves should be suspended. Almost invariably, the concession owners were not indigents and not attached to the local communities. They were given permits to work in the forest without any consultations with traditional leaders. I can say on authority that all the forest reserves have been invaded by rich miners who have engaged Chinese in their operations.
Rich miners.
The chiefs and opinion leaders are most unhappy with the invasion of the forest and farmlands. I personally received a lot of complaints from chiefs. According to them, they had kept the forest in pristine state for hundreds of years. He goes on and on and on, talks about how these miners invaded every single forest space that was available.
I see. That's a part of the report, and you touched on it, and on this particular point about the invasion of these forest reserves. Professor Frimpong-Boateng also disclosed that some NPP bigwigs engaged the service of Chinese nationals to engage in illegal mining on their behalf.
Yes, yes. So that is even to go to the MP's bid, where he still talks about the mining in the forest reserves. He says that to make matters worse, almost all the Ghanaian concession owners sold part of their concessions to Chinese nationals who invaded the forest with heavy machinery and mined gold, and in the process degraded the forest farmlands and in some cases destroyed cocoa farms without any compensation to traditional landowners. Now he talks about a challenge which he labels number 3 as unwholesome behavior of some MPs and government appointees. And in this particular challenge, he says that it is on record that the activities of some senior members of the MPP accounted for the anger at the community levels. Honorable Joseph Albert Kwam, the former MP for Manso Nkwanta, exemplifies such individuals. This is a member of parliament for the Manso Nkwanta constituency in the Ashanti region, and at the same time, a member of the board of the Minerals Commission. He used his position as a member of the Minerals Commission to acquire several dozens of large-scale concessions in his district, ostensibly for community mining purposes. He ended up selling these concessions to private individuals, including party members, for 200,000 cedis per concession.
Well, these allegations captured in this the report, and let me just put it on record as well that we do know that there's been some investigation that has been initiated into the details of this particular report. But Professor Frimpong-Boateng, in the last few weeks, has been talking. In fact, the details of this report just complement a number of things that he has said in the not too distant past. Take a listen to this interview that he had with GTV not too long ago.
When we went around, I think we got about 150, 200 that you could see. Okay. The rest had either been given to the owners or they put in some extra pass and moved them away. Okay. And then somebody put it out there, Frimpong-Boateng has taken 500. What am I going to do with it? There was an orchestrated scheme, even within the party and the government.
To get you out.
To get you out. So that, look, why is it when I left, now everybody's in the forest? At that time, we dare not enter the forest. You know, But as I said, I don't want to go into details now because I have a lot to say on that. But let me tell you that I did not take one excavator for anything. And they know the truth. Now things are coming up. We know those who are behind it and the party people who are there, people in government, including Jubilee House, who are doing Galamsey and so on, even now.
So that's Professor Frimpong-Boateng there. This was the first time before this report was revealed, or we intercepted it, that he indicated that people at the Jubilee House are said to have been involved in illegal mining. And then he defended his position that there's no way that earlier report that some 500 excavators got mentioned under his watch, and so he's supposed to be held accountable for that, is indeed true. And that is also captured in this report that we have intercepted, the 36-page report which you have a copy of right now. He has consistently said that this whole report of he being the one to have supervised the missing excavators, now he points figures at Kojo Nkrumah as being the one who allegedly schemed this whole thing against him. Now, what do we know? Because he mentions the NDC there as well.
Yes, so even before the NDC, he tries to paint a picture that this issue of illegal mining was right from the top to the bottom, where he, under the challenges number 4, he says that throughout our struggle with illegalities in the in the small scale mining sector, what baffled me was the total disregard to the president's commitment to the environment. I can state without any equivocation that many party officials from national to the unit committee level had their friends, peers, agents, relatives, financiers, or relatives engaged in illegal mining. Most of them engaged Chinese working for them. I am not referring to party people who had their legitimate concessions and were mining sustainably as they were instructed to do so. These are appointees in the Jubilee House that are doing or supporting illegal mining or interfering with the fight against Galamsey. And examples are Lord Comey, Charles Niteku, and Frank Asedu Bekwe, into brackets Protozwa. He goes on to say the established miners who are members or sympathizers of the NDC. That it is well known in the small-scale mining circles that NDC members and sympathizers were well established in the mining scale, in the small-scale mining, especially in the western region. They acquired several concessions in mineral-rich areas during the long periods of NDC reign. They had the money and other resources to not only sponsor NDC candidates, but also sponsor independent candidates in the supposedly strongholds of the MPP. This is what happened in the Takwa and Evaluate
constituency. I remember how things played out in that 2020 elections.
In the Wassa East District, a former NDC deputy minister, who is also MP for the Wassa East constituency, has been actively mining in the Sabri forest for years. When MPP party officials complained and the army component of Operation Vanguard was withdrawn almost 2 years to the 2020 elections, the NDC was given an advantage in terms of access to the resources for mining. This is because there are far more NDC people engaged in illegal mining than MPP members in the region.
Well, you know what? Here's what we've done. We've reached out to a number of people who have whose names have been captured in this report. They've indicated that they have contacted their lawyers and they're going to challenge the details of it. But it raises critical questions about the issue of illegal mining in this country, the commitment and the political will to fight illegal mining, and the said beneficiaries of illegal mining who are alleged to be the ones in power who are also supposed to lead this fight. Now, there's another aspect of the report, Dennis, that talks about the security. I mean, the military who were engaged in what they call the Operation Vanguard. What does it state in there?
Yes, so Operation Vanguard. And even before we go that, he had indicated in his opening remarks, the introduction, to say that soldiers had officially been withdrawn from mining sites, but in many areas, regular Ghana Army personnel were seen providing security at illegal mining sites. What saddened me most was when Mr. Gabi Asari Ochredako called to defend a company that was actively destroying the environment, especially the forests and river of Ofin in the Apa Prama and Kobro forests. So let's look at what he specifically says about Operation Vanguard. And that will be found on page 13 of the report, where he talks about activities of Operation Vanguard.
Right.
That consisted of men from the army and police.
That's right.
And were charged with controlling illegal activities at the mining centers. When the soldiers were withdrawn from Operation Vanguard on 16th of March 2019 due to complaints by small-scale miners, mainly from the MPP stock, the police detachment took over the entire Operation Vanguard.
Right.
This is when things deteriorated. There were consistent reports that the police developed the habit of going around the mining sites, extorting monies from miners.
That's according to this report.
Yes, as can be imagined, there were policemen who were NDC sympathizers, and such individuals touted the miners, telling them, we were sent by the government you voted for, in quote. Things did not go down well with the MPP sympathizers and voters. Talking about the community mining, he mentions some names here too who were not particularly in agreement with this particular project, which he says was working well. So the community mining was conceptualized by the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining. As earlier indicated, the IMCIM had vetted and granted license to 2,000 small-scale miners to operate legally and sustainably. The community mining program was rolled out, and the president himself commissioned the first site in Wasa Amenfi district. The community mining project was well subscribed and it became very popular. However, the Ministry of Lands, especially the appointment of Honorable Kwaku Asmocheme, became hostile and antagonistic to the program. Some elements in the Minerals Commission, including Mr. S.K. Boafo, the chairman of the Minerals Commission Board, supported the position of the Ministry of Lands. Apparently, they were angry that the IMCIM was at the forefront in matters concerning small-scale mining, which they said were among the functions of the Minerals Commission. The effect of this antagonism was that several community mining sites that the IMCIM had planned and were ready to commission were effectively sabotaged and blocked by the Minerals Commission and the Lands Commission. Typical examples were the community mining sites in the Asante Akim area. A day before the commissioning of the site by the IMCIM, Mr. S.K. Boafo called the MCE of the Asante Akim Central to block the event. He warned the MCE not to allow the IMCIM to do the commissioning, otherwise he might lose his job. He goes on and on and on.
Professor Frimpong-Boateng says he authored this report. He stands by the details of it. That's the letter that we have. In fact, Dennis, you have a copy of that Professor Frimpong-Boateng letter, right? That he was responding to Abdul Malik Kwekubako, asking questions of whether the said report, which was first made reference to by Kevin Taylor, was indeed coming from him. What did he say in that letter?
Yes, so this letter is dated 18th April 2023, and it was addressed to Mr. Abdul Malik Kwekubako, Accra. So he writes, Dear Mr. Kwekubako, I acknowledge receipt of your WhatsApp message you sent me at 1:30 p.m. today, Tuesday, 18th April 2023, which had a link to excerpts of publications by Mr. Eko Taylor on his program Loud Silence on Sunday, 16th April 2023. I have not laid hands on all documents exhibited on the program. However, I have seen the copy of a report I presented to the Chief of Staff at the Presidency a little over a year ago on her orders. That contained the piece you sent to me. The Chief of Staff wrote to me to present a report to the President on the work of the IMCIM, which I chaired. Furthermore, I was told to suggest a way forward in the fight against illegal mining. I prepared a report which I signed on the 19th of March 2021 and presented to the Chief of Staff. I am solely responsible for the report and I stand by every statement. I presented verifiable facts, not innuendos, to the Chief of Staff. Your attacks on me have been consistent and long-standing. It started in August 2010 when you suggested that I quit the MPP presidential primaries for a strange reason. I am also presenting some articles from your Crusading Guide newspaper. I wish you a good evening. Signed, Kobina Frimpong-Boateng.
So this is Professor Frimpong-Boateng responding to Abdul Malik Kwekubako.
And yes, if you read the report, where he talks about sabotage and how people were vilifying him in his attempt to lead the interministerial committee. He mentioned instances where he says that Malik Abdukakubako was one of those people who stood in his way and wrote articles about him and the work that he was doing.
He talks about big men. This big men matter is also captured in this 37-page report, which we have intercepted. Dennis, what does this big man issue come in here on the report?
Well, so he captures that part, so-called big men above. Charles Osu, Director of Operations of Forestry Commission. Then he begins to recount. On Monday, 11th January 2021, the task force entered a concession at a location called Frimpong-Boateng, which we had been monitoring for some time. Residents in the area complained about harassment by Chinese miners. The damage to the forest reserve was unimaginable. Big economic trees had been felled and dumped into muddy water bodies to rot. Huge pits were scattered over dozens of acres of land. Nearby cocoa farms had been destroyed. 7 excavators were seized. As usual, so-called big men started calling. First was Mr. Charles Osu, who claimed ownership of the concession and of the excavators. This individual happens to be the operations manager of the Forestry Commission, and there he was mining in the forest reserve without any permit and destroying forest, farmlands, water bodies, and indeed entire biodiversity. Not long after Charles Osu made his call, Frank Esedu Bekwe, popularly called Protozwa, of the Office of the Chief of Staff, also called the task force and asked for the release of the excavators. You can be sure that the Chief of Staff knew nothing about it. Now,
and Charles Bisio is, we do know, worked with the Forestry Commission at the time when Sir John was there, as it's
Charles Owusu.
That's Charles Owusu.
Yes,
worked with the Forestry Commission at the time when Sir John was there.
Precisely so.
His director. I see, and he's mentioned in a number of areas in this particular report as well, which you have just made reference to.
Yeah.
But does it also raise questions about the knowledge that the Chief of Staff had about this particular directive that
No, so he ended by saying that you can be sure that the Chief of Staff knew nothing about it. But what is intriguing, Alfred, is the fact that this in many parts, or in some parts of it, touches on the murder of Major Mahama. So there's a part where he labeled Donald Ensia, that's somebody's name, that many Ghanaians will recall the name CJ Alaska, a mining company co-owned by Donald Ensia, and a Canadian national called Simon Ayman. That caused a lot of destruction in the town, then known as Denchero Boasi, near Diaso. During the last NDC regime, several mining companies signed MOUs with the Ghana Army that regulated and supply of security services to the mining companies. At one point, the soldiers at the site of CJ Alaska were under the command of Captain Mahama. The fine army man was killed while providing security for Donald Ensia and his CJ Alaska. When MPP took over in 2017, all MOUs were cancelled and CJ Alaska hired armed macho men to provide security. Residents in the community bordering the forest reserves complained that they could not enter the forest around to cut wood to pound fufu. They could not go through the forest to their farms. They were beaten by the Chinese, who had been acquired by the concession owned by CJ Alaska. There were credible reports that on many occasions Chinese miners slapped Ghanaians, including women and children, with a broadside of machete. The IMCIM organized a task force and conducted a complex operation to dislodge Donald Ensia and his CJ Alaska from the Aso forest.
Interesting stuff. But you know what? The details of this we have serialized on 3news.com. Take some time and visit 3news.com. Dennis Wedam, I thank you so much for